So Bambu Lab have just announced not one new printer, but 1.5 new printers. So let's get into that. I'm going to be mostly going through spec. I'm not going to do a clickbait video. I don't have one, so I don't have anything to show. But talk to you about why you might want to consider this printer, or what's different about this printer versus the HD2. This is now the new H2S. And yeah, help you make a buying decision if you're thinking about it. So in a nutshell, Bambu Lab have just announced the brand new Bambu Lab H2S. I'm still not a fan of the naming conventions, but the difference between this and the HD2 is it's a single nozzle, which means if you're doing multi-material printing, then something like HD2 probably will have its benefits there. So just one thing to consider right off the bat. It's very, very similar to the HD2. It's a much bigger printer than the previous P1S and the X1C and all of that jazz. So if you are printing basically large stuff, this is probably going to be the printer for you. It also has the ability to add on a lot of those extras that the HD2 had available. So if you want a laser module, you're going to be able to get that. Now, before we dive into what is new on this machine and some of the things to consider, let's just talk about their other new printer, which is the H2C, I believe it is. And Bambu Lab's reasoning for announcing this before it's actually officially announced, and they've got more information, is that they didn't want people to buy the new H2S and then feel as though they'd been robbed further down the line. If you buy a brand new printer, and it's meant to be coming out in around about December time, that you would then feel absolutely robbed because you've forked out like $1,000 on this brand new printer, and then something different comes down the line. Now, the new H2C is going to be completely made for multi-material printing. It's a tool changer printer. It looks like it's got some really interesting technology coming to it. I believe it's inductive heating for it. It's going to have some new revolutionary bits in terms of how it changes those nozzles around to basically lower the amount of waste you've got, keep those speeds up there for multi-material. I haven't delved too much into it, but if you are in for multi-material printing, it is probably worthwhile hanging on. One thing to note about it as well, Bambu Lab do say that the H2D and H2S will be upgradable to the new H2C multi-material printing bits and mechanics and everything else there. That's a lot of H2 things in there. They do, however, say that it will take time, patience, and you'll need to have some pretty good skills to make that happen. But it sounds like you will be able to buy an upgrade kit to upgrade those two older machines. Anyway, enough with that. Let's talk about the H2S. So if you are in the market for a Bambu Lab printer and you want a bigger print volume, then this is literally the printer for you. I know a lot of people online, when I was reading the comments on forums and everything else, voiced the opinion that they didn't really want what the H2D had to offer. The two nozzle was a nice thing to have. A lot of people not too fussed about the laser module, but the H2S basically gives you all the benefits of a H2D in terms of print volume, speed, and all of that jazz. But you've got one single nozzle on it, and if you need to, you can also upgrade to things like the laser modules. Now I'm going to grab my laptop and just go through a couple of things on the screen here, because there are a few interesting things that I think are worth considering, and just a few things on there that might stand out to people, just again, like I said, to help them make a buying decision. So let's do a screen grab of this so you can see what I'm seeing as well. Right, here we go. So the first thing that's nice about this, it's still expensive, but in the UK it's going to be retailing from £1,000 to £999, which makes it substantially cheaper than something like the H2D, which was, you know, a pretty expensive printer in my opinion. You can then upgrade it and get the H2S AMS combo as well, so if you want to use it with the new AMS system, then you'll be able to, and that takes it to £1,200. So all in all, a pretty good price if you're looking for that full package. If you want to then upgrade it to the laser enclosure with the obviously laser shielding, everything on the front of it, and have the laser module built in, it takes it up to £1,800. So again, cheaper than buying the H2D with the laser component. So if you are after something that's big build volume, you also want a laser on it, you'd probably consider that. It does look as though it's either sold out in its base configuration without the AMS combo, or they're just pushing people to buy it with a combo at the moment. If you want it just as a single unit, so the £999 one, you've got to wait until October. That's what it's showing, at least in the UK. Not too sure about the US. So all in all, it looks like an X1C, but bigger, and a P1S, but bigger. It's not a huge amount here to kind of write home about when it comes to the build quality. It's what we kind of come to expect from Bambu Lab. The big benefit here, obviously apart from the size and everything else that we'll go on to, if you're going from a P1S or a P1P, is it has a nice screen on the front of it. It's one of my big complaints is that the P1S has that horrible little Kindle screen. It's really irritating to try and interact with. So that's a nice thing to have on there. If you need to interact with it, you don't want to be using your mobile phone or your tablet or whatever else that you're using to interact with your machine. It's just nice to have that big touch screen on the front just to interact with. So moving across a few things on here, it's got the active heated chamber as well. So if you are in an environment where, I don't know, like me, for example, and you are printing in a garage, somewhere that isn't that well thermally insulated, it's quite nice to have that during the colder months. So here I get down to around about -7 degrees Celsius over the winter. My P1S has always been fine. I've not had any issues with it. But for anybody who is printing in different types of material, I tend to just stick to PLA, so it's not been an issue for me. But I understand if you are then printing with different types of material, that could become problematic down the road. So having something that's got that heated enclosure is a nice thing to have. Apparently this will also be faster, which I guess is nice. Although again, I think they are really, really fast machines already, but having something that is faster, and if it gives me that same quality, then that's an absolute bonus. And then you've got your AI cameras. So there's 23 sensors and 3 cameras built into this as well for all your AI spaghetti detection to make sure that everything is working. There's no debris on the plate and stuff like that, which is a nice thing to have. And then one of the other things to consider here is that it's got all your venting and all of that. So that way, again, so you're printing something like PLA, you've got the venting to help cool it. If you're then having the laser module, you've also got the venting for that. So that's just a nice thing to have, something that's new on there versus the older X1Cs and the P1S. Also, just noting here, it says up to 30% faster print speed. I'm sure I read somewhere that was 13%, but show 30%, so that's nice. So for everybody who's printing with stuff that's outside of PLA, you've got the ability to print in like your PETG, PC, PPA, ABS, all of that is going to be here. So you've got your engineering filaments that you're able to print in. The hot end will reach up to 350 degrees Celsius. And 65 degrees Celsius for your active heated chamber as well. So it's going to print a whole range of different materials that's well and truly outside of my remit, so I can't say whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, but let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. Is that something that you use? Apparently it's also using some kind of servo system and again some AI bits to make sure there's no grinding of the filament and there's no clogs and stuff like that. So it should detect that and hopefully prevent some of those awful errors that you sometimes get. I've not really had many where they clog up on the outside of the nozzle. But the one thing that I have had with my P1S, which is really frustrating when it does happen, is where the filament then starts to grind inside of the gears and there's nothing actually extruding, and it goes on and it thinks it is, and that can be really frustrating. Apparently this should detect that in real time, so that way if I am getting something where my filament has then gotten caught within the gears and it's grinding, I'm not going to then waste loads of time where it thinks it's printed and it's not. And hopefully it might save a few prints as well, because there's nothing worse than having to go back and go, what height's my print at and where do I need to print from? So just, again, a nice thing to have. Then it goes on to talk more about your AI system. So you've got your cameras built into it and all the different bits there. And the thing that makes me really laugh, and I guess this might happen if you're not paying attention at all, but it talks about the pre-flight checklist by AI. And again, it shows this camera scanning the print bed, and on there is a nozzle and an Allen key, which I think is crazy. Like, at first I thought that means that, oh, in case your nozzle falls off the printer and is on the print bed, but I assume it's someone's changed the nozzle around from like a larger to a smaller nozzle and forgot to take it off there. Again, a nice thing to have. There have been a few times where I have forgotten to take a print off the print bed and gone to print something else, and then you get the error where the thing is just rammed into it and it tells you off. I guess this would prevent stupid things that I do, so a nice to have. Then goes on to talk more about the airflow and the filtration system. So you've got your high temperature printing, low temperature printing as well to help PLA and PETG. And then if you are using the laser and cutting and engraving system, it's then got the filtration system on there. I guess that would be handy for things like ABS. Hopefully it's better than the filter that was on P1S. I very rarely print an ABS or anything like that, but if I do, and you go into the garage afterwards, you can tell that it's been printing an ABS. There's a smell that does escape it. I assume it will be much better because if you're printing, well, not printing, if you're laser engraving and cutting, you do want to have a really good filtration for that. Obviously, then the big standout is the fact that it's a bigger, better machine. So the print volume of 340 by 320 by 340. So it's 120% larger build volume than the X1 Carbon. And this is the thing that everyone's been screaming about and wanting. Certainly something that has piqued my interest. I don't really have a need for it, and I don't think I'll end up getting one of these just because I can fit the vast majority of things I need to on my P1Ss and my A1 as well. So although I would like a larger print volume, it's certainly not something that I absolutely need. However, if you are into cosplay, if you're printing props, if you're printing just large, I don't know, bits that you absolutely do need that extra print volume for, this is the printer that people have been waiting for. And I'm really excited to see how all those reviews come in and what people have to say about it, because I'm excited for that. I think the full scale printing, the larger print bed is going to make a massive difference for a lot of people out there. Might not suit my use case, absolutely, but I reckon there's a lot of you out there who watch my videos that want something bigger and that have been waiting for this sort of machine. Then goes on to talk about the top speed and being more reliable than ever, up to 30% faster, 60% more extrusion force as well. So I assume that's going to help. I'm not always an expert on these things. The one thing I do note when it gets to this section, and I noticed in a few of the pictures, is the front bit, so I guess your tool head and the nozzle and everything else, it's using more of an A1 design versus something like the P1S, which is good in a way because you've then got the hot swappable nozzles, which is a massive, massive improvement. The P1S doesn't take long to change the nozzle over, but you do need an Allen key and you do need to do some screwing and then you swap them out. With this, you've literally got the little clips, you can pull the nozzle off, pop a new one on, and you're literally off to the races. I think that's fantastic. The thing I can't quite make out is that I think the front face of like the nozzle enclosure and everything uses the same system that's on the A1 and the A1 Mini, which is like a clip, so you kind of squeeze it and you clip it off. Whereas the P1S has that lovely magnetic one, which basically clips on and off. It's really easy to take on and off. I think it's a fantastic system. On my A1 and A1 Mini, that front clip has snapped on both of those when I've had to swap it, because it's inevitable. You're literally squeezing plastic, the clips eventually break off. So I hope it is better designed on this than it is on the A1 and the A1 Mini, but just thought I'd throw that out there. Then it goes on to talk about, obviously, the cutting, engraving, the drawing capabilities as well. So if you're in the market for that sort of thing, it does have that on there. I still would prefer, personally for me, if I was into laser engraving and cutting, I would have a separate machine for that, because I don't like the idea of having all of that debris and burnt bits getting into my 3D printer. I just think that over time is going to absolutely cut down on the length of time they length of time they last and their lifespan. But that's just me. You might want something that's going to have absolutely everything all in one, and that's absolutely fine. And that is pretty much it. There will be loads of other little things that no doubt come out as this machine starts landing and people start to get it. There'll be lots of influencers and YouTubers and stuff who get this machine, or who will already have this machine. They'll have some fantastic things to say on there. But all in all, I think it's a pretty good machine. I think at the £999, it's a relatively well-placed price point for a lot of people who want that bigger machine. I still think for a lot of people, something like the P1S is going to be an amazing machine to go for, or even the A1. I still feel like that's an absolutely amazing value proposition. But if you are in the market for something that is larger and you don't want to fork out the huge amount that the H2D costs, then it's certainly worthwhile looking for. If you're looking for that multi-material, like I said, it's certainly worthwhile waiting to see what the H2C comes out with and what that new system is going to look like, because I think it sounds really intriguing in their press release that they put out there. I'm really excited to see what they have coming to the market and whether or not that makes a big difference. Yeah, let me know in the comments. Are you going to be upgrading to this? Are you going to be waiting to the H2C? I'd be really interested to know if you're going to be picking one of these up. So in the meantime, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that and stay safe. Bye.